So tonight we're going to start with something every single woman and teenage girl experiences, but rarely talks about openly. You know what I'm talking about, that thing that happens to you in middle school and stays with you until menopause? We're going to talk about it. Because lawmakers are talking about it, and some barrier-breaking teenage girls are, too. This is Congresswoman Grace Meng. She represents Queens, New York, and over in D.C., she is known as the period lady. No, she's not a grammarian hustling the halls on Capitol Hill. She's a lawmaker who was on a mission to bring some attention to menstruation. The period lady. So how did she get that title? Well, a few years ago, a kid from her district wrote to her with a problem, saying homeless shelters couldn't buy tampons and pads for people with the grant money they had. It was an issue Representative Meng didn't know about, but quickly worked with FEMA, and it was fixed. Homeless shelters can now buy those items with federal grant money. Then Representative Meng learned federal prisons didn't provide female inmates these necessities either. Why is that awful? A box of tampons costs 16 times what an inmate makes working in an hour. So the representative went to the Oval Office, and again, just last year, under President Trump's First Step Act, the products are now given to women when they need them in federal custody. Let's pause and recognize here the bipartisan agreement there. Meng is a Democrat, the president a Republican, but darn it all, they agreed. Women get access to something basic they need to have as women. The fact that it had to come to that proves that periods, whether on purpose or not, were previously politicized. I mean, shoot, it took legislation to take the taxes off of pads and tampons right here in Minnesota, and we're only one of a handful of states that has actually done that. Oh, and one last thing for Meng, she's not done yet. She has introduced the Menstruation for Equality Act, and that would do several things, including giving states the option to use federal grant money to give students free pads and tampons in school. Oh, and speaking of schools and periods,
ladies of Bronx Prep Middle School have decided to come together and talk about a topic that's taboo both at home and at school. That topic being periods.
That was the podcast, Shh, Periods. The brains behind it, 7 girls from a Bronx, New York middle school who got real tired of school nurses calling tampons marshmallows and no one talking about what they and all girls go through. So that group of 7 took it upon themselves to talk about it. And guess what? It got noticed, winning the grand prize in the National Public Radio Student Podcast Challenge. Period. So that new bill that the representative introduced in Congress has support from members of both parties. Again, some bipartisan work here, so we'll see if anything comes of that.